The battlefield was already lost before he made the choice. Smoke and dust strangled the air, and alien banners fluttered over the ruins where human cities once stood tall. His body was broken, cut open by plasma fire, his armor nothing but cracked metal and scorched fabric. Around him, the ground was littered with corpses, friends, brothers, sisters in arms, all fallen in the endless war that had no hope left. He knew there was only one thing left to do. His hands trembled as they clutched the forbidden device, the one hidden relic the Resistance had sworn never to use unless the end was certain. It pulsed in his grip like a living heart, humming with ancient energy. He was supposed to destroy himself with it, to deny the aliens the satisfaction of parading him through their camps. He was supposed to burn out like a spark and vanish into ash. He remembered his commander's voice echoing in his mind. This device was never meant for the living. It was meant to take them down with us if we had nothing left. And yet, staring at the flickering lights across the ruined horizon, he realized it wasn't just vengeance he wanted. It was freedom, a final act that would not leave him a slave in their hands. With blood running down his face and fire filling his lungs, he pressed his thumb into the activation seal. A brilliant light cracked open the air itself. The sound wasn't an explosion. It was deeper, like the sky itself tearing apart, a ripping scream of reality being pulled open. The ground shook violently beneath him, rocks rising, shattering, floating for a heartbeat before crashing back. His body was hurled backward, pain erupting across every nerve, but he didn't care. This was supposed to be the end. His end. Death. Silence. Freedom. But then, through the blinding light of the portal, he saw a shape. A figure. A silhouette that did not belong to alien or human soldier. Slowly, as though time itself had slowed, the figure stepped forward out of the rift. The glow faded around her body, but her eyes pierced through the smoke and fire and locked directly onto him. He froze, because she knew him. Her lips parted as if she was whispering his name, though he had never seen her before in his life. She stumbled toward him, kneeling at his side, her hands trembling as they reached for his bloodied chest. She looked terrified, relieved, broken, and alive all at once. "Don't move," she whispered, her voice raw, trembling with emotion. "I found you. Finally." He tried to speak, but only blood came out. His mind reeled. Who was she? How did she know his name? How had she come through the portal? A portal meant to kill, not to summon. Her fingers pressed against his wound, her touch warm even as his skin was ice. She leaned closer, her hair falling against his cheek, her breath desperate, as if she had been waiting lifetimes for this moment. "You weren't supposed to die here," she said fiercely, almost angrily, as tears streamed down her face. "Not like this. Not without me." The portal behind her pulsed with unstable light, sparks of alien fire licking outward, threatening to collapse into nothingness. He wanted to ask her what she meant, who she was, how she had known his name, but his body betrayed him. His eyes dimmed, his lungs faltered, his heartbeat slowed. Yet she refused to let go. "Stay with me," she begged, her forehead pressed against his. "Please, I crossed the stars for this. For you." And in the last flickering moment before his vision failed, he realized the truth. This was no ordinary stranger. This woman wasn't here by chance. She had stepped through a rift made by his sacrifice, pulled from somewhere beyond his understanding, carrying his name on her lips as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. He had chosen death, but instead, fate had given him something else. Not an end, a beginning. And in her trembling hands, with her tears falling against his broken skin, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The war around them continued to rage, alien fire lighting the ruins in red and blue. But for him, lying broken beneath her, the battlefield fell silent. All he could hear was her heartbeat against his chest and her desperate voice whispering over and over, "I won't let you go again. Not again." The forbidden device still glowed faintly beside him, its energy feeding the unstable rift that tore at the edges of the sky. The portal was not closing. If anything, it was widening. Reality itself strained and cracked as if calling to him, or to her. He thought he had chosen to end it all, but instead he had torn open a door. And through that door had come a woman who carried his fate in her hands. And even as the darkness of unconsciousness pulled him under, he realized one terrifying, impossible truth. This was only the beginning. The night after the battlefield felt unreal. The smoke still curled upward into the ruined sky, and the cries of dying men still echoed faintly across the scorched plain. But here, in the hollow of shattered stone where she had dragged him, there was a stillness that clung to his skin. He had been certain that the portal would end him. Yet instead, he now lay on a bed of rubble, his chest bound in torn fabric, and above him was the stranger. Her hand shook as she tended to his wounds, but her eyes never left his face, as though she was afraid he might vanish if she dared to blink. He coughed, tasting iron, his voice ragged. "Who are you?" Her lips parted, as though the answer had lived on her tongue for years but burned too much to speak. Finally, with trembling breath, she said, "I crossed time. I crossed stars. Because of you." He frowned through the haze of pain, struggling to understand. "Because of me? I don't even know you." Her eyes closed tight for a heartbeat, and when she opened them again, there was a grief so sharp it pierced him deeper than any alien blade could have. "You don't. Not yet." Her fingers brushed his cheek, tender, reverent, as though she was touching a ghost come back to life. "But I know you. I've always known you." Her touch made his pulse race, though his body was broken. He should have been afraid, should have pulled back, but instead he found himself drawn closer. Her voice carried weight, sorrow, longing. "Your sacrifice," she whispered. It opened the way. It tore the veil between worlds. "I stepped through because I couldn't let it end here. Not again." He caught the words, "not again." They struck him harder than any wound. His breath hitched, and he searched her eyes, demanding answers she wasn't ready to give. "What do you mean, not again?" Her gaze faltered. She looked away, her hand curling into a fist against her thigh as though restraining herself from saying too much. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with the crackle of distant fires and the hum of the fading portal still shimmering faintly in the distance. Finally, she said, "You've died before. I watched it. I lived with the emptiness you left behind. And when the chance came to rewrite it, to reach across, I took it. I don't care what it costs." His heart lurched. The words sounded impossible, but her voice carried a truth too raw to dismiss. He studied her face, the hollow beneath her eyes, the trembling of her lips, the way she clung to him as though her soul was anchored to his very existence. It was the face of someone who had already grieved for him, who had already buried him in her heart. "Why me?" His question was hoarse, almost broken. "I'm no one. Just another soldier who failed to hold the line." She shook her head violently, her hair brushing against his chest as she leaned close. "Don't say that. You are more than you think, more than they will ever understand. They may see you as broken, discarded, forgotten, but I saw what you did, what you gave, and I will not let you be erased again." Her words carved into him, stirring something he had long buried, the fragile ember of hope. He wanted to believe her, though logic screamed otherwise. She was a stranger who knew his name, who touched him as if he belonged to her, who wept for a loss he had not yet lived. And yet, in her grief, in her devotion, there was no deception. He found his hand lifting, trembling, to touch hers. Their fingers met, and for a moment the ruined world around them seemed to fall away. Heat passed between them, a warmth that pushed back the cold ache in his bones. "Who are you really?" he asked softly. Her answer came like a confession torn from her very soul. "I am the one who refused to let you stay dead." The weight of those words pressed into him, heavy, incomprehensible, and yet he couldn't let go. He was drawn deeper, bound by a thread he couldn't see but could feel tightening around his heart. She was mystery, sorrow, devotion, and fire all at once. And though the world outside burned, he could think of nothing but the way her eyes held both love and grief in the same glance. And in that moment, he knew Whatever truth she carried, whatever secrets she kept buried, they were now bound. His sacrifice had not ended in death, it had summoned her. And the war they thought lost was only beginning again, with her by his side. The ruins groaned under the weight of ash and silence. In the distance, the sky still pulsed faintly with the light of the rift. A wound in reality that refused to close, shimmering with a color no human I had ever seen before. He had tried not to look at it, but even with his eyes shut, he could feel its pull, like a heartbeat echoing in the marrow of his bones. They had been hiding for 2 days now, scavenging what little remained of food and water among the rubble. She never strayed far from him, her hand always brushing against his arm or resting at the small of his back, as though touch alone could tether him to this world. Yet even her closeness could not drown out the whispers. At first they were faint, like static carried on the wind. But now they came sharper, cutting into his skull like blades of ice. You will kneel. You will burn again. She will betray you. He pressed his hands over his ears, but the voices were inside him, not around him. Sometimes they spoke in the guttural tongue of the alien warlords. Other times they came in his own voice, older, cracked with exhaustion. Once, only once, he swore he heard her, whispering his name with a sorrow that froze him to the core. He staggered against the wall of a collapsed building, sweat running cold down his temples. She was there instantly, her hands gripping his shoulders, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't listen," she hissed, as though she knew exactly what plagued him. "No matter what they say, it's not the future. It's not the truth. How do you know that?" His voice cracked, rough with desperation. "How can you know what's real and what's not?" Her lips trembled, but her gaze did not falter. "Because I've heard them too. That portal, it's not just a doorway. It's a scar. And through it, everything bleeds, past, future, lies, fears. They will use it to tear you apart, if you let them." The ground rumbled faintly, dust spilling from the cracked ceiling above them. Far away, a shriek echoed, the warlord's hounds tracking through the ruins. He froze, every nerve in his body screaming at him to run. But she caught his hand and squeezed, steady and fierce. "Look at me," she demanded. "Not at them. Not at the voices. Me." He dragged his gaze to hers. Her face was streaked with dirt, her hair tangled from days of hiding. But in her eyes there was only fire. And for a moment, the whispers dulled, retreating like shadows at dawn. "They're saying things," he whispered, his throat tight. "Things I shouldn't know. I heard myself, telling me I'll burn again. I heard you, telling me you'll betray me." Her jaw clenched, and for an instant, pain flickered in her eyes. But she shook her head violently. "I don't care what you heard. That's not me. That's not us. You hear me?" He wanted to believe her, but the whispers weren't fading. They crept back, curling around his thoughts, teasing with half-truths. One voice in particular lingered, softer than the rest. "Your sacrifice is not done. You will bleed again, and she will watch." His chest tightened, fear and fury battling inside him. He slammed his fist against the wall, sparks of pain shooting through his arm. "Why me? Why do they want me so badly?" "Because you opened it." Her voice was quiet now, almost reverent. She touched the center of his chest, where the device had detonated days ago. "You tore the veil. You became part of it, and they'll never stop hunting you for it." The distant shrieks grew louder, closer, bouncing between the ruins like hunting horns. He swallowed hard, the weight of inevitability pressing on his shoulders. The whispers twisted with the sound, hissing promises of capture, of fire, of betrayal. But then her arms slid around him, pulling him tight against her. Her breath warmed his ear as she whispered, "They will not take you. Not while I live. Whatever the voices say, I'll prove them liars." And though the whispers still gnawed at his mind, her vow cut deeper. It was the only sound he clung to as the alien hounds closed in, their shadows stretching long across the broken streets, and the portal's glow pulsed like an open wound in the sky. The ruins pressed in like a tomb, every echo of alien hounds gnawing at his nerves. But it wasn't the chase that hollowed him. It was her silence. For hours, she had guided him through shattered tunnels and collapsed underways, her hand gripping his, her eyes fixed forward. And yet he felt it, something unsaid, clinging to her lips like a secret too heavy to carry. When they finally stumbled into the hollow belly of a ruined power station, she stopped. The dim glow of the portal pulsed faintly even here, bleeding its unnatural light into every corner. He slumped against a fractured console, chest heaving. The whispers had grown quieter for now, muffled by the distance, but his body still felt scorched from the inside out. She stood in the shadows, her shoulders tense, her gaze locked not on him but on the faint, flickering glow above. "You deserve the truth," she said finally, her voice low, trembling like a confession. He straightened, dread already clawing its way into his gut. Truth about what? The portal. She turned then, and the look in her eyes nearly undid him. Not cold, not cruel, but weighted with grief. It isn't just a doorway. It isn't just an accident of your sacrifice. It's a weapon. One the aliens have been hunting for centuries. One they swore humans would never touch. You opened it. His mouth went dry. A weapon? What do you mean? Her footsteps were hesitant as she crossed the cracked floor, as if every step toward him deepened the wound of what she carried. She crouched before him, her hands trembling as they brushed across his scarred chest, the place where the forbidden device had torn him apart. It's not a gate to another world. It's a scar between worlds, a rift that can be wielded, but it can't stay open without a tether, without blood. His pulse hammered. "You're saying..." Her eyes closed, a single tear slipping free. "It wants you. That's why you hear the whispers, why it hasn't consumed itself already. It feeds on the life that tore it open. Your life." The words cut like a blade, sharper than the wounds in his flesh. He stared at her, struggling to breathe. "So what? I die again and it closes? Or it does something worse?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering the answer as though it were a sin. "If you give yourself fully, it won't just close. It will bend. It will burn their fleets to ash, tear their worlds apart. Humanity would rise. You'd end them all." The silence that followed roared in his skull. He had thought his sacrifice was over. He had thought the fire and pain had bought humanity a chance. But now she told him he was still only halfway through his crucifixion. The whispers surged again, as if they had been listening all along. "Yes, burn again, bleed again. She asked for your death. She betrays you." He shoved them back, gritting his teeth, clutching her arms like a man drowning. "And if I don't, if I refuse?" Her face crumpled, and for the first time, he saw fear not of the aliens, not of death, but of him. "If you don't, the portal will unravel on its own. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it does, it won't care what it destroys. It will take Earth with it. The colonies. Everything." His chest heaved as though he had been struck. The choice was a noose tightening around his throat. Save humanity by burning himself to ash, or cling to life and risk condemning everything left alive. "You knew this." His voice was raw. "You knew it when you pulled me back, when you kept me alive. Why didn't you tell me then?" Her fingers tightened around his, desperate, pleading. "Because I couldn't lose you again. Because every moment you've been here, breathing, holding me, has been stolen time, and I was too selfish to give it up." He closed his eyes, the ache in his chest twisting into something unbearable. She had known. She had chosen to keep him, knowing he was already claimed by fire. When he opened them again, her face was inches from his, her breath trembling against his lips. "You don't have to choose yet," she whispered. "Maybe we can find another way. Maybe." The ground shook violently, cutting her off. Dust cascaded from the ceiling, the ruined walls groaning. In the distance, the hounds howled again, closer this time. And behind them, deeper, darker, came the low hum of alien warships. The hunters were converging on the rift. "They know," he rasped, pushing himself to his feet. His body ached, but fire glowed faintly in his veins, a reminder of what the portal had made him. "They're coming for it. For me." Her eyes gleamed in the glow, wet with tears. "Then we run." We fight. Whatever it takes until you decide. For a moment, time held still. The whispers hissed lies and promises. The ruins quaked. The glow pulsed above like a second sun. And between all of it, he held her gaze, knowing his life was no longer his own. But when she pressed her lips to his, fierce and trembling, he clung to her as if that kiss was the only truth left in the world. And still, in the back of his mind, the choice echoed. His blood, his life, his sacrifice. Again, the stars flickered above like dying candles, but neither of them looked up. The ruins of the city smoldered around them, beams of broken steel jutting out like bones from a corpse. And in the center of it all the rift pulsed, a wound in reality itself, humming with light and shadows that seemed to breathe. The enemy was close. They could hear the guttural roars of alien warlords as their hounds of metal and flesh stalked through the ash. Time was crumbling, and yet, in that moment, all he felt was her trembling hand pressed against his chest, her eyes searching his face with something deeper than fear. It was longing, sorrow, defiance, all tangled together. "You can't," she whispered, her lips brushing his ear as though the world wasn't collapsing around them. "Not again. Not like before. You gave once. It should have been enough. Let humanity find another way." He shook his head, though his throat felt raw with unshed words. "There is no other way. You said it yourself. The portal chooses. It wants me. Maybe it always did." Her grip tightened, nails digging into him as if by pain she could anchor him to her side. "And what about me? Am I supposed to watch you fade again? Am I supposed to carry the weight of your death twice?" Her voice cracked, and though the roar of the enemy swelled closer, it was her breaking that pierced him deeper. He cupped her face with calloused hands, thumbs brushing the streaks of ash and tears that marred her beauty. "If it means you live, if it means humanity has even one chance more, then yes. I'd do it again. I'd do it every time." Her lips crushed into his before he could finish, fire and grief burning together. The kiss was desperate, almost violent, as though she could trap his soul in her mouth, as though every heartbeat share between them might delay the inevitable. He tasted her tears, her fury, her unspoken plea to choose her over the world. And for a moment, just a moment, he wanted to. The rift throbbed, and with it, the whispers returned. Not alien, not human, something in between, a chorus of voices threading into his skull, showing him fragments of what could be. Her standing alone in a wasteland, her collapsing against the rift with blood on her hands, her screaming his name into silence. Each vision clawed at him, tearing his resolve thread by thread. She pulled back, resting her forehead against his. "If you go in there, I'll follow. Don't think for a second I'll let you vanish alone." He almost laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "That's exactly why I can't let you." Outside, the warlords howled, the ground trembling beneath their charge. Inside, the rift's glow stretched toward him, hungry. He held her one last time, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the warmth of her breath, the defiance that had made him fall in love with her long before he admitted it. Every kiss between them now was a farewell, but also a promise. Love had bloomed in the ashes, and though the future demanded his blood, it was her arms that gave him the courage to stand. Even as she whispered for him not to, even as her tears dampened his shoulder, he knew what he would choose. And yet, as the shadows of the alien army closed in, he felt the truth gnaw at him. Maybe this time, he wasn't the only one the rift demanded. The air split with the crack of gunfire, not alien but human, and for a heartbeat he thought salvation had come. Figures emerged from the smoke, soldiers in ragged armor with Earth's insignia still painted across their chests, though scarred and faded. Relief burned in his throat. Humanity wasn't gone, they weren't alone. But then he saw their leader, a man with cold eyes and a smile too sharp to be trusted. A man who bowed, not to him, not to her, but toward the towering shadows of the alien warlords as they stepped into the clearing. "You promised me power," the collaborator said, his voice echoing with desperate hunger. "You swore the rift would answer to me. I've given you the key Take them. His chest locked with horror, the kiss of betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. Humanity's last hope wasn't stolen by aliens. It was handed over by one of their own. She gasped beside him, fury igniting in her eyes. But before either of them could act, the warlords surged forward. Chains of living metal lashed from their arms, striking like serpents. He shoved her behind him, but the chains wrapped around them both, cold as ice and burning with strange energy. He roared, straining against them, muscles tearing, blood bursting beneath his skin. The whispers in his head screamed louder, frantic now, showing him visions of humanity burning under alien skies, Earth fractured, cities twisted into breeding grounds for machines. "No!" she screamed, kicking, thrashing, her nails tearing across her captor's armor. But the collaborator stood there smirking, as if her fury was a victory already his. "It was never meant for you," he told her. "It was always meant for those strong enough to take it." Her eyes, wild with rage and despair, locked on his. Don't let them win." He fought until his bones screamed, but the warlords dragged her forward, her body wrenched from his arms, her cries ripping into him like knives. The rift loomed ahead, pulsing brighter, hungrier, shadows writhing within like an ocean of nightmares. The alien leader raised its hand, and the portal seemed to bow, stretching its edges wide as though obeying its new master. "No!" His voice cracked, breaking as they forced her toward the light. He lunged, blood running down his arms, vision blurring. But the collaborator's blade met his chest, shallow but enough to stagger him back. "This is bigger than you," the man hissed, pressing closer. "Bigger than your love, bigger than your sacrifice. Humanity will kneel, and I will be the one who holds the leash." And then it happened. The warlords hurled her into the rift. Her scream echoed as she vanished into the blinding swirl, swallowed whole by light and shadow. For one breathless, impossible moment, he swore he saw her hand reaching back for him. Then she was gone. The portal snapped shut behind her, its glow shifting to something darker, something corrupted, as if her presence inside had poisoned its very core. He collapsed to his knees, choking on grief and rage, while the collaborators' laughter twisted through the ruined air. The whispers inside his mind didn't show him futures now. They showed him one word, etched across the silence, louder than everything else. "Fight!" The battlefield lay in ruin, bodies scattered, smoke rising in the night. He could still hear her scream, still feel the way her hand had slipped from his. The rift hung before him, unstable and corrupted, the warlords encircling it like priests at an altar. The collaborator stood among them, smug and certain that history was already his to write. But in the hollow of the man's chest, where pain tried to suffocate him, a deeper fire sparked. Broken, bleeding, but unyielding, he knew one truth. If she was lost beyond that abyss, then he would not remain behind. The whispers clawed at his skull, no longer fragments, but full voices, alien and human, past and future. They hissed warnings, bargains, promises of agony. Yet one thread cut through them all, the memory of her voice, trembling as she told him not to give himself up again. He clenched his jaw, tears hot on his face. "I already died once," he muttered. "I'll do it again, but this time not to end life. To find her." The warlords turned as he staggered to his feet, blood dripping into the dirt, his body burning from the inside out. "Contain him," one snarled, but when the chains of living metal lashed out again, he caught them in his fists. Fire bloomed from his skin, the unstable energy that had been tearing him apart, now a storm in his veins. He roared, and the chains melted, dripping liquid steel across his arms. The collaborator's grin faltered, fear cracking through his arrogance as the man stepped forward. The rift pulsed, unstable, hungering. He could feel it calling to him, tugging at his soul. It was not a doorway anymore. It was a wound, a scar in the fabric of existence. To follow her meant surrendering everything. Flesh, blood, humanity itself. He didn't hesitate. With a howl that shook the ruins, he drove his blade into his palm, blood spilling onto the ground, and raised his arms toward the rift. Light flared, brighter than any sun, searing the eyes of the aliens and men alike. His body cracked, bones splintering as energy consumed him, fire ripping through every nerve. He was unraveling, thread by thread, but he forced his scream into a vow. "I'm coming for you." The collaborator rushed forward, shrieking, "No, it's mine. It was meant for me." But when he tried to reach the rift, the energy rejected him, blasting him back into the dirt. His body burned hollow. The warlords fell to their knees, some in worship, some in fear, as the man's form dissolved into fire, blood, and light. His scream tore across the night, echoing through the collapsing skies, shaking the world itself. And then he was gone. The rift swallowed him whole, its unstable chaos twisting as his essence bled into it. He was no longer only human. He was no longer only mortal. He was part of the portal itself, a blazing flame ripping across realities, hunting for her voice, her touch, her soul. In the silence that followed, his scream lingered like thunder fading across an endless void. The first thing he felt was breath. It scraped against his lungs like fire, raw and searing, but it was breath. Then came the weight of silence, thick, strange, like the air itself carried secrets not meant for him. When he opened his eyes, the world was not the one he'd left. The stars above were not the constellations of Earth or any colony he'd known. They burned in shades of violet and silver, flickering with impossible spirals, as though they were alive and watching. The sky itself was a canvas of motion, rivers of color streaming like liquid auroras, shifting with each heartbeat he took. He was sprawled on glassy ground that pulsed faintly beneath him, alive as flesh, stretching toward a horizon where mountains hung upside down, defying gravity itself. And then he heard her. "You came." Her voice, soft but steady, cut through the alien air. He turned, his body heavy, unstable, every movement leaving trails of light where his skin brushed the ground. She was there, whole and alive, standing at the edge of the ridge. Her hair shimmered with the glow of the strange suns, her eyes wet with tears, and though her body trembled, she didn't hesitate. She ran to him, fell to her knees, and touched his face with shaking hands. He almost flinched. His skin wasn't just skin anymore. It was heat, light, unstable fire held together by will. Yet her palms pressed firmly against him, as if he were flesh and bone. "I told you," she whispered, her lips close to his ear. "I told you I would wait." His throat closed, his voice cracking. I wasn't sure I'd make it." "You didn't," she said softly, pulling back to look at him. "Not all of you." Only then did he notice the truth in her eyes. His arms glowed faintly, veins of fire coursing beneath translucent skin. His reflection in her tears showed eyes not human, but burning like twin stars, flickering with unstable energy. He was no longer only himself, no longer only human. The portal had remade him, binding him to the fracture between worlds. And yet, when she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, when she kissed him with desperate tenderness, he felt whole again. The voices, the whispers that had haunted him across the threshold, fell silent. Her love silenced the chaos. Around them, the world stirred. Shapes rose from the glassy plains, alien beings of light and shadow, drawn to the rift energy within him. They circled like predators or priests, their forms bending the air. But when they saw her clinging to him, her lips against his burning skin, their approach faltered. He rose slowly, holding her hand, fire sparking at his fingertips, but steadied by her touch. Together, they faced this new realm not as prey, but as something unbreakable. The beings bent low, not in attack, but in reverence. The rift energy within him had marked him as more than human, a traveler who had crossed death and void. And her devotion made him something rarer still, a flame that refused to burn alone. She turned her gaze upward toward the endless galaxies spiraling across the sky. "Do you see it?" she whispered. "This place, it isn't the end. It's a beginning. Humanity's future could be here. His chest tightened. The portal had taken everything from him, reshaped him, bound him to something beyond comprehension. Yet in her arms, he was still a man who loved, who bled, who fought. He cupped her face with hands of fire that didn't burn her, and for a long moment, they just breathed together, letting the alien winds carry away the scars of their old world. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady though it trembled with awe. Then we'll start here. Together. She smiled through her tears, pressing closer. Together. And in that alien dawn, beneath skies alive with impossible colors, their love became the first spark of humanity's next chapter, a legend not of endings, but of beginnings.